on. There's a new report that's been released by the Economic Policy Institute in Washington, D.C., which has studied the costs of President Obama's new Environmental Protection Agency regulations. The report found that the combined impact of these regulations, measured by the cost of compliance, amounts to just 0.1% of the U.S. economy. 0.1%. These regulations clearly, in and of themselves, are not a drag on the economy, or the drag that some feared they would be. In fact, there are indications that they are actually creating jobs in our green economy. And let's not forget the benefits that come from a cleaner environment and cleaner air. Let's consider, for example, looking at history, the steps the United States took to deal with acid rain. Through a series of new regulations and legislation, we succeeded in reducing acid rain emissions 65% since 1976. Despite industry experts all saying that the cost of these steps would increase electricity rates by 10% or more, electricity pricing has actually fallen since then in most states. For example, between 1990 and 2006, electricity prices fell by 64% in Illinois, 35% in Michigan, 36% in Pennsylvania, all during a period of higher regulation. The business-oriented Economist magazine, you're all familiar with, in 2002 called our acid rain program, quote, probably the greatest green success story of the decade. But we must recognize that a profound change has been underway in the U.S., and it is accelerating under the Obama administration. In just a few years, we have done more to reduce greenhouse gas emissions than ever before. We've invested more than $90 billion in developing clean energy, the largest research and development investment in clean energy in our nation's history. These critical investments have already created and saved hundreds of thousands of jobs across the country and put the U.S. on a path to double the energy that we generate from wind, solar, and other renewables in the near future. In fact, President Obama proposed an ambitious but achievable goal of generating 80% of our nation's electricity from clean energy sources by 2035. By the way, I would note that European companies have so far won a very large share of this research funding. The spending on wind energy, for example, over $1 billion has been spent with European companies, which shows that green energy is a win-win for the U.S. and for Europe from a trade perspective. We've also established new fuel economy standards for cars and trucks that will raise fuel efficiency, lower fuel costs for consumers by reducing consumption, and reduce carbon dioxide pollution by over 6 billion metric tons, equivalent to the total emissions from the United States in the year 2010, or what the Amazon rainforest absorbs in 3 years. And that all came from just raising the CAFE standards, as we call them. It is clear that together, Europe, the United States, and indeed the whole world share a great challenge. To stop global warming at 2 degrees, it means cutting global emissions in half in 4 decades. To allow poorer countries to continue to develop without significant emissions reductions means countries like Austria and the United States would have to cut our emissions by 80%. Distinctions between developed and developing nations become meaningless when we're discussing such dramatic risks to our way of life. The climate energy challenge is the test of our times, and it's my sincere hope and belief that humankind is equal to this challenge. Thank you.